Also want to get to another topic here, all related to this, as papers with U.S. State Department markings were found on a hotel printer in Anchorage, Alaska, ahead of that closed-door meeting between President Trump and Russia's Vladimir Putin. NPR reporting the 8 pages appear to be produced by U.S. staff and accidentally left behind shared precise locations, meeting times, and phone numbers of U.S. government employees. One page disclosed that Trump planned to give an American bald eagle desk statue as a gift to Putin. The discovery was reportedly made by guests at Hotel Captain Cook. That is a 4-star hotel about 20 minutes from the base where the two leaders met. On Saturday, White House Deputy Press Secretary Anna Kelly told NPR that the papers were a, quote, multi-page lunch menu and suggested leaving the information on a public printer was not a security breach. I want to talk about this, but also the talks that are expected to take place between Trump and Zelenskyy, as well as European leaders tomorrow. Let's bring in a friend of the show here, Ivana Stradner, research fellow at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Ivana, thank you so much. I know you're busy, so we definitely appreciate you joining us here 2 days in a row.
Always pleasure.
All right, so first off, I do want to ask you about these documents that NPR reports were found. I know you took a look at them. We saw a couple of them in that photo provided by NPR. What do you make of that? Is that any kind of national security breach of any kind?
I like to call balls and strikes always. And I think when we were talking about signal, what some people call it signal gate several months ago, that was significantly more serious. I read the full documents. And yes, in addition to lunch menu, there were locations, there were some phone numbers. But what this really tells me is not a particular security, some sensitive information breach. It's more the level of unprofessionalism, and that's something that we need to address, and the administration needs to pay attention to. What really was on the menu that's less important, as I mentioned, there were some numbers and some locations, but it was more or less everything that we already knew. There were not plans about whether what the meeting, what they will discuss, some sensitive information, some declassified information. That's something that I didn't see.
Do you think it's going to lead to any kind of changes within the administration? I would imagine that they're going to say to the employee or employees who left that on the hotel printer, hey, you can't do that in the future because, again, as you mentioned, we're not talking about necessarily classified information, but it has a lot of details about what was going to happen during that meeting and those phone numbers.
You're absolutely right. So this absolutely has to be addressed. This is significantly more than a lunch menu, but definitely less than some very severe security breaches. So this just shows also the level of unprofessionalism, and there should be consequences for this. What worries me more is that when we have situations like this, including what happened a few months ago, that can also raise certain questions about our allies and our trust. This is how you truly build, but you can also ruin your reputation. And that's something that we need to be careful when we talk about this particular breach.
All right, let's move on to talking about tomorrow's meeting. That is going to be a big meeting between two world leaders there, talking about President Trump and President Zelenskyy of Ukraine. We saw what happened several months ago in the Oval Office, a big explosion, so to speak, between President Trump and Zelenskyy. What do we expect for tomorrow? Could we see anything like that, or do we think maybe their relationship has become a little less fractured over time?
You're right that several months ago we saw a disaster in the White House. This time around, I truly hope it will not happen, also because Zelenskyy will have support from our European allies, but more importantly, because President Trump is seeing through Putin's lies, and he also understands the position of Zelenskyy. So I do not expect, I hope it will not happen, something what we saw several months ago. I think what we saw on Friday was a very important meeting, but the one that we are going to see tomorrow will be the most important meeting, because then we are going to know what is the base, what Ukraine is willing to give up or to gain, what are their conditions. My concern is that there are more and more talks about land swaps, or that Ukraine should cede certain parts of its country. And that is actually not going to happen. I don't see that's going to happen, because Zelensky, he cannot accept that blackmail. That's a typical, Russia's KGB game, which is to raise stakes so high. And then, so Zelensky rejects that offer. So Putin can always say, you see, Zelensky is not a reliable partner. So that's the game that we should actually watch for tomorrow. And I truly hope also that President Trump will be reminded that this war, it was not Ukraine that started this war, that this war was started by Russia. And not only in 2022, but 2014. And we already know who to blame for this war and what consequences are going to be. Unfortunately, Russian propaganda loves to portray Zelensky as a irrational, unreliable partner, and we should not fall for that. Meanwhile, the game that I'm very concerned about is how Russia is pushing for business developments between the U.S. And Russia. The end goal is to claim, well, who cares about Ukraine? We have more important things to do. We have business to do. And that's part of Putin's game, to buy more time, to make sure that there is a short-term ceasefire. And as I mentioned, to reposition his military to strengthen and then to continue. And I do believe that President Zelensky will reiterate something along those lines tomorrow, making sure that everyone is on the same page when it comes to Russia's protracted war. Speaking of the same page, one thing that Russia truly wants is to destroy our center of gravity in the West, which is alliances. And I think it's tremendously important tomorrow that all European leaders and NATO allies, along with the United States, speak with one voice. That is going to be a nightmare for Putin.
I want to ask, because yesterday when we spoke a little less than 24 hours ago, we know that European leaders had been invited to attend, but now we know that several of them will actually attend this meeting. We're talking about the leaders in France, Britain, as well as Germany. How significant is that?
It is very important, as I mentioned, that we speak with one voice. But I think it's also very important to note two things: that there is no security and peace in Europe also without the U.S. leadership. Or of course, we are not doing this only for purely idealistic reasons, because peace in Europe also means peace in the United States. And the second thing that I also want to emphasize, Europe has to absolutely do more. And I also see numerous positive movements already when it comes to weapons delivery, when it comes to more sanctions on Russia. So I think tomorrow's meeting will be tremendously important also to show that unity between the United States and Europe.
All right, Ivana Stradner, as always, thank you so much for taking the time to join us here and help discuss all of this further. Obviously, there is so much to this. Is there anything else that you want to add here before I let you go?
The only thing that I would like to add is that we definitely have to understand Putin's long-term plans. There is no simple solution to this war. We have to be patient, but we also have to be determined and not to fear any escalations, because after all, Europe and the United States are significantly stronger than Russia.
All right. Thank you again, Ivana, for taking the time to join us for a second day in a row. We appreciate it.
Always pleasure.
And I do want to pop this up on your screen because we are getting a post from President Donald Trump this morning. We showed you one of them a bit earlier, but this one coming in as he says, big progress on Russia. Stay tuned. Posting this here about 24 hours ahead of the arrival of President Zelensky of Ukraine as the two meet alongside those European leaders. We're going to have extensive coverage of all of that tomorrow as it does happen. And of course, we'll bring you all of the coverage here on Live Now from Fox, those live images in real time. That is what we do here. So again, you can watch all of that on Live Now from Fox, set for tomorrow.